Welcome, everyone. I'm here with Patrick Orr. Patrick was scheduled to play the Prokofiev Second Piano Concerto with the Boulder Symphony this month, but we're very lucky to have him to put on a series of private concerts with us. Patrick was the recent gold medal winner of the International Keyboard Odysseyad and Festival. He's currently at Wichita State University, and we're very excited to hear him play the Piano Sonata in C Major of Franz Joseph Haydn. Patrick, welcome. It's great to see you. It's great to see you keeping your chops up. We're very excited to hear you play in just a few minutes. Can you talk about your background in piano? I understand you got started when you were 10 years old, and what you've been doing the past 10 years.
It's great to be here. Yeah, I started playing when I was 10, which is pretty late compared to a lot of people. I know a lot of people who want to be concert pianists or performers in general usually start around like 5, sometimes 4, like around that age. But I started taking lessons, I think it was the summer that I turned 10 from a woman named Joan Robinson. She actually just had her 90th birthday this last week, so I played happy birthday over the phone. But yeah, she was a hugely influential person in my beginnings, especially. But yeah, I grew up and lived in Kingman, Kansas, which is a small town of about 3,000 people. She was like really the only piano teacher I knew at the time. I remember my parents driving me to lessons every week or so with Julie Bees. So she's the professor of piano at Wichita State. And when I started taking lessons with her when I was 15, I think, when I was 15, I didn't know like the fingerings to any major scales or minor scales or anything. So she really, I owe a lot of anything I'm able to do to her, because she is not only a wonderful teacher, but she's also an incredible performer. And seeing her perform in her element at Wichita State and giving recitals and lectures and concerto appearances was always really inspiring to me. I feel like in the past 10 years, I've always felt the pressure of like catching up, but I've recently been trying to let myself just delve into art just for the sake of what it is, rather than thinking of it as a sort of timeline, like I have to be doing this by this time or whatever. So I guess especially recently, with being forced to stay at home, it's given me a lot more time to, I guess the silver lining in all of this is that I get to have more time practicing and honing my skills and understanding what the music means to me, just objectively as how I feel about these pieces and how I want to play them. So yeah, and that brings me to right now.
Who are some of the composers that made you fall in love with the piano the most, that you get up every morning and that you're the most excited to channel?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that for me, it's like certain times of the day I feel more drawn to certain composers. But overall, I would say that Rachmaninoff and Prokofiev were always really, really, I don't know, I always gravitate towards those specifically, and Scriabin. I just feel like their music speaks really deeply to everyone, but I feel like I really can connect to the music that they have, and I don't know, I love romanticism. So I think that's mainly why I'm drawn to them. But yeah, so in the morning, I don't know what it is. So I've been working on a piece by Ravel, Gaspard. And so every morning that I've woken up since lockdown, I've sort of started out with that. That and Bach are like my favorite pieces to start the day with. And they're usually the first pieces I'm thinking about in the morning. But then throughout the day, I kind of like work on other things or whatever. But at the end of the day, I always end up on Rachmaninoff. So I would have to say, if I had to pick one, it would be Rachmaninoff.
That's great. And so your program over the next few weeks is very romantically oriented. You've got the Schumann list, of course, Rachmaninoff going, but you're going to start today with Franz Joseph Haydn. Uh, Haydn is a classical composer. These last of his piano sonatas were written in the 1790s when he took a trip to London. Um, Haydn influenced and was influenced by Mozart, Beethoven. He's kind of the odd man out when we talk about the classical era. He's the one that not as many people are aware of, but he wrote many string quartets, over 100 symphonies, obviously piano sonatas, a lot of great chamber music. His musical style for me is so much fun to present to audiences because I always think of him as like the Weird Al of the 1700s, like this musical comedian. Like in the Farewell Symphony, he instructs his musicians to walk off the stage because he wanted to protest his bosses keeping them confined at Esterhazy when it was getting hot in the summer. They wanted to go home. He wrote the Surprise Symphony to get people's attention because it was customary for people to socialize during symphonic concerts. He has the Joke, the string quartet in E flat. The Miracle Symphony was named when a chandelier fell off of the roof in the middle of a concert, and it was a miracle that nobody was injured. This piano sonata that you're playing in C major, it's got an incredible humor and this youthful energy, even though it's written by a guy who's in his 60s. That's when Haydn went to London, he was 60, 61, 62 in the 1790s, and people describe his youthful vigor, his desire to do everything, to learn about everything. Can you talk a little bit about, and obviously you're going to convey it in the performance in a few minutes, but can you talk a little bit about the spirit of this musical humor that Haydn brings to the table?
Yeah, I think that especially with this piece, I think this is the first piece by Haydn that I ever heard when I was about 11 or 12 years old. But for me, Haydn is sort of throughout all of his compositions is just the preservation of the inner child and still finding ways to have fun. I mean, like you were saying, even though he was like in his 60s when he was in London and composing symphonies and everything, I think that when we think of viewing art or viewing music and the response it's supposed to, that we're supposed to get from it, I don't feel like, and this might be the reason he's the odd man out, is because we don't often think of like laughing at something as a response to like a classical art form. And so I think that that's what's so fun about this piece is while it's very much in the galant style of everything sounds like very symmetrical, very perfect, it makes there are lots of awkward pauses in the first and third movements that I think are the joke, that I think make everything stop for just a second to make you think, and then this, I like that. I think that this piece, I think of the idea that he might have been improvising, sort of, as he was going along. I don't know, that's always come to my mind. I think that in playing this, it's so important to be able to smile and be able to, like, I don't know, make people laugh. I think that's the response I would want to get. I would not want anybody to just sit there silently watching politely. I think it's supposed to make people laugh because it's very, very comical. And like I said, some of the pauses, especially, I think in the third movement especially, are like just awkwardly funny. And I don't know, that's what drew me to this piece, is just that awkward sense of humor. Yeah, I adore this piece.
Yeah, it's kind of like with talk shows, in the past couple of weeks, it's like the comedians are delivering the jokes and there's no audience to respond. And just like you talked about, like Haydn has all these kind of pregnant pauses and he's done this in his symphonies too, where he intentionally makes the audience think that the piece is over. And then 4 bars later, it goes on. And in recordings of this, or if you're in a performance of this, the whole audience bursts out laughing. So you get to perform and see what it's like with an empty house. And I'm sure as you channel your inner child, that people at home will be laughing right along with you.
Thank you. That's the goal.
So without further ado, here is Patrick Orr's performance of Haydn's Piano Sonata in C major.